thought I was buying peace, a simple life, someone to share meals with. I didn't know I was buying a family of 12, or that love could come with an invoice. I sat at that beachside cafe in Cebu watching the sun come up over the water, alone with my coffee and my thoughts. 3 weeks I'd been in the Philippines by then. 3 weeks of running from the cold back in Iowa, from the empty house that echoed every time I walked through it, from the silence that had become my only companion since the divorce papers were signed 2 years before. My kids barely called anymore, maybe once a month if I was lucky. Retirement was supposed to feel like freedom, but it just felt like waiting. Waiting for what? I didn't know. I just knew I couldn't sit in that house another winter staring at walls that used to hold a family. The cafe was almost empty that early. Just me and an older Filipino man reading a newspaper at the corner table. The ocean was calm, barely moving, and I remember thinking how peaceful it all was, how different from everything I'd left behind. I'd been coming to this same spot every morning since I arrived, ordering the same breakfast, sitting at the same table. Routine was all I had left. "Good morning, Sir Preston." Her voice came from behind me, soft and careful. I turned and there she was, Sherell. She worked at the hotel where I was staying, at the front desk. I'd checked in 3 weeks ago and she'd been the one to hand me my room key. She'd remembered my name then too, which surprised me. Most people don't. "You are enjoying your stay?" she asked. And her smile was genuine. Not the fake customer service smile I was used to. Something real. "Yeah," I said, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. "It's beautiful here. Peaceful." She hesitated, glanced back toward the hotel, then sat down. Up close I could see she was younger than I'd thought. Maybe mid-30s. Her English was careful but clear, and there was something about the way she looked at me that made me feel seen for the first time in years. "I see you here every morning," she said. "Always alone. You do not have family with you?" I shook my head. "Divorced. Kids are grown. They have their own lives now." She nodded slowly, understanding in her eyes. "That must be lonely," she said quietly, and something in my chest tightened because it was. God, it was so lonely. "I understand lonely," she continued. "I have a son, 8 years old. His father left when he was baby, so it is just me and him, and my family, but they have their own problems." We talked for 20 minutes that first morning. She told me about her job at the hotel, how she worked part-time because full-time positions were hard to find. She told me about her dream to study tourism management, to maybe manage a hotel someday instead of just working the desk. She told me about her son Miguel, how smart he was, how he loved basketball and drawing. And I told her about Iowa, about my years managing the warehouse, about how retirement felt more like an ending than a beginning. When she stood up to go back to work, she smiled at me again. "Maybe I see you tomorrow morning?" she asked. "I would like that," I said, and I meant it. She came back the next morning, and the morning after that. By the 4th day, coffee had turned into breakfast. By the end of the week, breakfast had turned into lunch at a small local place she recommended down the street. "You must try real Filipino food," she'd said, laughing at my hesitation. Not just hotel food. She was right. The place was tiny, plastic chairs and fans spinning overhead, but the food was incredible. She taught me how to eat with my hands, how to mix the rice and the stew together. She laughed when I couldn't get it right, but not in a mean way, in a way that made me want to try again. "Say it again," she'd say, teaching me Cebuano words. "Mayong buntag." "Good morning." I'd repeat it back, badly, and she'd cover her mouth laughing. "You sound like my uncle when he is drunk," she'd tease. But then she'd lean closer and say it again, slower, and I'd try again. Those lunches turned into dinners. She showed me her favorite spots around Cebu, places tourists never saw, night markets where we ate street food from vendors she'd known since she was a kid, a small chapel on a hill where you could see the whole city lit up at night. "This is where I come when I need to think," she told me, and I felt honored that she'd share it with me. I started paying for everything without thinking about it. Meals, groceries when we'd stop at the market, A new school uniform for Miguel when she mentioned his old one was getting too small. No, Preston, you do not have to, she'd say. But I'd insist. I want to. I'd tell her, you've given me more in 1 week than I've had in 2 years. And when I said that, tears filled her eyes. Real tears. She looked away, embarrassed, and wiped them quickly. No one has ever been so kind to me, she whispered. I reached across the table and took her hand. It felt right. It felt like I'd been looking for her my whole life and didn't even know it. On my last night before I was supposed to fly home, we walked along the beach near my hotel. The moon was full and the water was silver. She was quiet, more quiet than usual, and I knew something was on her mind. Preston, she finally said, stopping and turning to face me. Will you come back? The question hung between us. I'd been thinking about it for days, about going back to Iowa, to that empty house, to the loneliness, about leaving her here, about never seeing her smile again. I reached out and touched her face, brushed her hair back. I'm already planning it, I told her, and then I kissed her forehead and I meant every word. 3 months later I was back. Not for 3 weeks this time. I'd applied for a 6-month tourist visa and it had been approved. Sherell picked me up at the airport, and when I saw her waiting at arrivals with a handmade sign that said, "Welcome home, Preston," something in me broke open. She ran to me and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. You came back, she kept saying. You really came back? We drove to the apartment I'd rented, a small place in a quiet neighborhood not far from where her family lived. It wasn't much, but it had a balcony that looked out over the street, and it felt like mine, like ours. Those first few weeks were perfect. We fell into a routine like we'd been together for years. She'd come over every morning before work and we'd have coffee on the balcony. She'd stay most nights after her shift ended, cooking dinner in my tiny kitchen, teaching me how to make adobo and sinigang. We'd watch Filipino soap operas on the small TV and she'd translate for me, laughing at how dramatic everything was. Filipino TV is very intense, she'd say. Everyone is always crying or dying or both. She introduced me to Miguel on my 4th day back. He was shy at first, hiding behind her legs when she brought him to the apartment. Miguel, this is Kuya Preston, she'd said, using the term of respect for an older man. Say hello. He'd peeked out and whispered hello, then run back behind her. But kids are resilient. By the end of the afternoon, he was showing me his drawings, asking if I wanted to play basketball in the street. I bought him a new ball the next day. His face lit up like Christmas morning. Really? For me? He'd asked, looking at his mom for permission. Sherell's eyes were wet. Thank you, Preston, she'd said quietly. You do not have to do this. But I did. I wanted to. I wanted to be part of their lives. Her mother came to dinner the following week. Tita Loretta. She was a small woman with sharp eyes and a warm smile. She hugged me when she arrived, called me Anik, which Sherell told me meant son. You are part of family now, Tita Loretta said, patting my arm. You take care of my daughter and my grandson. This is good. We ate together, all of us crowded around my small table, and it felt like something I'd lost years ago, like family, like belonging. Tita Loretta told stories about Sherell as a little girl, how stubborn she was, how she'd wanted to be a teacher but had to drop out of college when she got pregnant. Life is hard here, she said, her smile fading. But we survive. We help each other. This is Filipino way. Sherell's younger brother Jomar showed up a few days later. He was 28, friendly, always smiling. Kuya Preston, nice to meet you, he'd said, shaking my hand firmly. My sister talks about you all the time. She is so happy now. We talked for a while, about basketball, about his job doing construction work when he could find it. Work is not steady here, he'd explained. Sometimes 1 week yes, 2 weeks no. It is difficult. Then, almost casually, he'd mentioned he needed help with his motorcycle. Just small repair, maybe 2,000 pesos. I can pay you back next month when I get paid. I'd waved him off. Don't worry about it, I'd said, pulling out my wallet. His face broke into a huge grin. Salamat, Kuya, thank you so much. You are a good man. Sherell had squeezed my hand under the table. One night, About 6 weeks after I'd arrived, we were lying in bed, and Sherell turned to me with tears in her eyes. "Preston," she said softly, "I have never been this happy. Never in my whole life." I pulled her closer. "Me neither," I said, and I meant it. "I wish you could stay forever," she whispered. I laughed a little. "Maybe I will." She pulled back and looked at me seriously. "You mean it?" Her eyes were searching mine, vulnerable and hopeful. "Yeah," I said, surprised by how easily the words came. "Yeah, I mean it. What's waiting for me back in Iowa? An empty house and a cold winter? I'd rather be here with you." She cried then, really cried, and I held her until she fell asleep in my arms. And just like that, retirement in America became a distant memory. I was home. This was home. With her, with Miguel, with this life we were building together. I'd found my quiet life. I'd found peace, or so I thought. I didn't know then that peace always comes with a price, and I was about to start paying it. The request started small, so small I barely noticed at first. Sherell moved into my apartment about 2 months in. "To help take care of you," she'd said, "you do not know how to do laundry the right way, and I can cook for you every day." It made sense. It felt natural. Why wouldn't she live with me? We were together. This was our life. But once she moved in, things changed. Slowly at first. Little things. "Preston," she'd said one morning while we were having coffee. "My mother called. She needs help with her blood pressure medicine. It is 8,000 pesos this month. The doctor increased her dose." I didn't even hesitate. "Of course," I said, reaching for my wallet. "Your mom's health is important." Sherell hugged me tight. "Thank you, my love. I hate asking you. I feel so ashamed." I'd kiss the top of her head. "Don't be. That's what I'm here for. To help." And I believed it. I wanted to help. I wanted to be the man who could fix things, who could take care of the people I loved. A week later, it was her cousin's daughter who needed tuition money. 12,000 pesos. Then Jomar's motorcycle broke down completely and needed 15,000 to fix. Every time, Sherell would apologize. Her eyes would fill with tears. "I am so sorry, Preston. I hate that my family always needs help. We are just poor people. We do not have money saved like Americans." And every time, I'd reassure her, "It's okay. Really. We're family now, right? This is what families do." But I started noticing something. She never asked directly. She'd mention the problem, her voice would break, tears would come, and I'd offer the money before she could even finish explaining. Like clockwork. One evening, there was a knock at the door. Sherell answered it, and I heard a man's voice, loud and friendly. She brought him into the living room. "Preston, this is my uncle, Tito Ramil." He was a big man, probably in his early 50s, with a gold chain around his neck and a wide smile. "Ah, the American boyfriend," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "My niece is very lucky. Very lucky." We sat down and talked for a while. Small talk, weather, politics, the economy. Then, smoothly, he shifted. "Preston, I have business opportunity. Small investment. Very good return," he explained. He wanted to open a sari-sari store, a small neighborhood shop. "Just need 30,000 pesos to start. Maybe you want to be partner?" We split profit 50-50. I hesitated. 30,000 pesos was about $550. Not a huge amount, but more than the small family emergencies. I glanced at Charelle. She was watching me carefully. "I do not know, uncle," she said quietly. "Preston already helps us so much." But there was something in her voice, something careful. Tito Ramil laughed. "No pressure, no pressure. Just opportunity. But if you want to help family build something, this is good way." I felt trapped. Everyone was looking at me, waiting. I forced a smile. "Sure," I said. "Let me help. For the family." Tito Ramil's grin widened. Sherell squeezed my arm. "You are so good to us," she whispered. That night, I transferred the money. Tito Ramil promised to keep me updated on the progress. 2 weeks. "We open," he'd said confidently. You will see. 2 weeks passed. No update. I asked Sherell about the store. Oh, I think they are still getting permits, she said vaguely. Another month went by. Nothing. I saw Tito Ramil at a family gathering and approached him. Hey, how's the store coming? I asked casually. He looked confused for a second, then waved his hand dismissively. Did not work out. Too many problems with location. Maybe next time. No apology, no offer to return the money. Just a shrug. I stood there, holding a beer, watching him laugh with other relatives, and felt something cold settle in my stomach. I'd been played. But I didn't say anything. I didn't want to cause tension. I didn't want Charelle to be embarrassed by her uncle. So I let it go. But the seed of doubt had been planted. I started keeping track after that. Not obsessively, just a small notebook where I'd write down expenses. Rent for the apartment, food, utilities, Sherell's phone bill that I'd taken over, Miguel's school fees, Tita Loretta's medications, Jomar's motorcycle, his rent when he fell behind, his food, his debts, another cousin's wedding gift, another relative's birthday, another emergency, always another emergency. 6 months in, I sat down one night while Sherell was visiting her mother and added everything up. $12,000. I'd spent over $12,000 in 6 months. My savings account was shrinking faster than I'd planned. My pension covered my basic needs, but this pace wasn't sustainable. When Sherell came home, I was sitting at the table with my notebook open. Hey, I said carefully, can we talk about money for a minute? She tensed immediately. I saw it in her shoulders, in the way her smile disappeared. What about money? She asked, her voice flat. I tried to keep my tone light. I just think maybe we should budget a little better. Slow down on some of the extra expenses. I want to make sure my savings last, you know? The silence that followed was heavy. She stared at me, and slowly, tears filled her eyes. You think I am using you, she said, her voice breaking. No, I said quickly, panic rising in my chest. No, that's not what I mean. I just meant we should be more careful, plan better. You think my family is using you, she interrupted, and now she was crying for real. You think we are just poor Filipinos, trying to take American money. Sherell, no, I didn't say that. You do not have to say it, she said, grabbing her bag. I can see it in your face. You are counting every peso you give us, like we are burden to you. She headed for the door. Where are you going? I asked, standing up. To my mother's house, she said coldly, where I belong, where I do not have to feel shame for being poor. The door slammed behind her. I tried calling her, 10 times that night, 20 times the next day. Every call went to voicemail. My texts went unanswered. 2 days passed, and I was losing my mind. Had I ruined everything? Had I destroyed the best thing in my life by being cheap, by questioning her? On the 3rd day, she finally answered. What do you want, Preston? She asked, her voice empty. I want you to come home, I said. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it the way it sounded. Please, come home. There was a long pause. I do not know if I can do this, she said quietly. If you do not trust me, what is the point? I do trust you, I said desperately. I was just being stupid, worrying about nothing. Please, Sherell, let me make it up to you. Another pause. How? She asked, and I knew what she wanted, what she needed to hear. I pulled up my banking app on my phone. I'm sending you 20,000 pesos right now, I said. For you. Not for family, not for emergencies, for you. Buy something nice. Do something that makes you happy. I'm sorry I made you feel bad. I heard her breath catch. You do not have to do that, she said, but her voice had softened. I want to, I said. I love you. Please come home. She came back that evening. She kissed me. She whispered, I knew you loved me. But that night, lying in bed next to her, staring at the ceiling while she slept peacefully beside me, I had a realization that terrified me. I was afraid of her, afraid of losing her, afraid of saying no. When had that happened? When had love turned into fear? The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning. Sherell was on her phone, her face serious. She hung up and turned to me. "My cousin Lena is in hospital," she said, her voice shaking. "She needs emergency surgery, something with her kidneys. They say if she does not get surgery soon, she could die." My stomach dropped. "How much?" I asked. 80,000 pesos, she said quietly. 80,000. I did the math in my head. About $1,400. A huge amount. The biggest single request yet. "Can I see the hospital paperwork?" I asked carefully. The moment the words left my mouth, I knew I'd made a mistake. Sherell's face went completely still. "What did you say?" she asked, her voice dangerous. "I just meant, to make sure we understand what the surgery is for." "You want proof?" she said, standing up. "You think we are lying. You think we are scamming you." "No, you think my cousin is not really sick?" she continued, her voice rising. "You think we made this up to steal your money?" She grabbed her phone and called someone, speaking rapid Cebuano. I couldn't follow. 5 minutes later, there was pounding on the door. Tita Loretta stormed in, her face furious. "What is this I hear?" she demanded. "You accuse us of lying? About my niece? About surgery?" I felt cornered, trapped, ashamed. They were both staring at me like I was a monster. "I didn't accuse anyone," I said weakly. "I just wanted to understand." "We welcomed you like family," Tita Loretta said, her voice shaking with anger. "My daughter loves you. We treat you like son. And this is how you thank us? You think we are criminals?" Sherell was crying now, real sobs. "I cannot believe this," she said. "I cannot believe you would think this about us." Guilt overwhelmed me. What kind of person was I? These people had opened their lives to me, and I was accusing them of lying about a medical emergency. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands. "I'm sorry," I said. "I'm so sorry. I'll send the money right now." I transferred 80,000 pesos while they watched. Sherell hugged her mother. They spoke quietly in Cebuano. Tita Loretta left without looking at me. Sherell stayed, but she was cold, distant. She slept on the couch that night. The week after that, things returned to normal on the surface. Sherell moved back into the bedroom. She smiled at me, kissed me, made dinner. But something had changed. I could feel it. A wall had gone up between us, and I didn't know how to break it down. 2 weeks after the surgery money, I casually asked her, "How's Lena doing? Is she recovering okay?" Sherell barely looked up from her phone. "She is fine," she said. "No details, no elaboration, just fine." "That's good," I said. "I'd like to visit her sometime." "Bring her some fruit or something. Where's she staying?" Sherell's jaw tightened. "Why do you need to see her?" "I just thought it would be nice." "You still do not trust me," she said, standing up. "You want to check if the surgery was real. You want to investigate us, like we are criminals." "That's not what I meant," I said, but my voice was weak. She stormed into the bedroom and slammed the door. I sat there alone in the living room, staring at my phone. After a few minutes, I did something I'm ashamed of. I opened Facebook. I found Sherell's profile and scrolled through her friends until I found someone named Lena. There were 3. I clicked on the second one, and my blood went cold. Posts from the week of the surgery, photos at a beach resort, Lena in a bikini, holding a cocktail, smiling with friends. "Best weekend ever," the caption said. The date was exactly 3 days after Sherell had told me about the emergency surgery. There was no hospital, no surgery, no emergency. I sat there, my hands shaking, staring at the screen. I should have confronted her. I should have demanded the truth, but I was too afraid of her anger, of losing her completely, of being alone again. So I closed the laptop and said nothing. I went to bed that night lying next to a woman I no longer trusted, and I hated myself for being too weak to do anything about it. A month later, I'd reached my limit. I was lying awake at 3 in the morning, my savings draining, my self-respect gone, and I made a decision. I had to leave. I had to go home. The next morning, I opened my laptop and booked a flight back to the US, 1 week out. When Sherell came back from work, I told her, "I need to go back to Iowa for a while," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Some things I need to take care of. Bank stuff. My house. I'll probably be gone a few weeks." I waited for her to protest, to cry, to beg me to stay. She just nodded. "Okay," she said flatly. "When do you leave?" "Next Tuesday." "Okay." That was it. She went to the bedroom and closed the door. That night, she didn't come to bed. I heard her on the phone, speaking Cebuano in low, angry tones. The next morning, everything changed. There was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Miguel standing there, tears streaming down his face. "Kuya Preston," he sobbed. "Please do not leave. Please do not go. Mama says you do not love us anymore. She says you are leaving forever." My heart shattered. I knelt down and hugged him. "That's not true, buddy," I said. "I'm just going to visit America for a little while. I'll come back." But even as I said it, I knew I was lying. Miguel cried harder. "Mama is so sad. She will not stop crying. Please, Kuya, please stay." I looked up and saw Sherell standing at the bottom of the stairs, her face streaked with tears, watching me. Our eyes met, and I saw it. I saw the calculation, the manipulation she'd sent Miguel. She'd told him exactly what to say. This was her move, her final play, and I was too weak to fight it. I stood up, went inside, and canceled the flight. Miguel stopped crying immediately. Sherell came upstairs and hugged me. "I knew you would not abandon us," she whispered in my ear. "I knew you loved us too much." But when I looked at her face, her eyes were empty, completely empty. A few days later, I was sitting on the balcony when I heard shouting from the street below. I looked down and saw Jomar, drunk, yelling up at my apartment. "Preston, hey Preston, come down here." I went downstairs and found him swaying, a half-empty bottle of rum in his hand. Neighbors were watching from their windows. "Jomar, go home," I said quietly. "You think you are better than us?" he shouted, pointing at me. "You come here with your American money. You use my sister, and now you want to leave? You think you can just leave?" "I'm not leaving," I said, trying to calm him down. "Go home. Sleep it off. You use her," he yelled again. "You sleep with her, you make her fall in love with you, and now you abandon her. You think we are stupid? You think we do not know what you are doing?" People were staring. I felt humiliated, exposed. "How much do you want?" I asked quietly. His anger stopped. He blinked. "What? How much do you want to go away right now?" I asked. He thought for a moment, swaying. 10,000 pesos. I pulled out my phone and transferred the money. His phone buzzed. He checked it, smiled, and walked away laughing. Just like that. No more anger. No more yelling. Just business. I stood there in the street, watching him disappear around the corner, and the truth hit me so hard I could barely breathe. This was never love. This was never family. I was never a boyfriend, never a partner, never a father figure to Miguel. I was a transaction, an ATM, a foreign wallet they could drain until there was nothing left, and I'd let them. I'd let them because I was lonely, because I was desperate, because I wanted so badly to believe someone could love me that I'd ignored every red flag, every lie, every manipulation. I went back upstairs. Charelle was waiting inside. "What did Jomar want?" she asked casually. I looked at her for a long moment. "Nothing," I said, "just saying hello." She smiled and went back to her phone, and I knew I was trapped, completely, utterly trapped. Sherell stopped coming to the apartment as much after that. She'd say she needed to stay with her mother. "She is not feeling well. I need to help her." One night would turn into two. Two would turn into three. I'd be alone in the apartment I was paying for, eating dinner by myself, wondering where she was, what she was doing. I'd text her, "Hey, are you coming back tonight?" The response would come hours later. Maybe tomorrow. Mama needs me. I started to notice she was different, colder, more distant. When she did come by, she'd stay on her phone the entire time, scrolling, typing, laughing at messages I couldn't see. "Who are you talking to?" I'd ask, trying to sound casual. "Just friends," she'd say without looking up. One evening, there was a soft knock at my door. I opened it to find an older Filipino woman I'd seen around the building. Aling B. She lived 2 floors down. "Sir Preston," she said quietly, glancing over her shoulder. "Can I come in?" I let her in, confused. She looked uncomfortable, wringing her hands. "I do not want to interfere," she began, "but I have been watching. I see what is happening, and I think you should know truth." My stomach tightened. "Know what?" She took a deep breath. "Sherell has boyfriend. They have been together for years. He lives in Manila. She visits him every month. Sometimes he comes here." The room tilted. "No," I said automatically. "No, she wouldn't." Aling B looked at me with pity. She pulled out her phone and showed me Facebook photos. Sherell and a younger Filipino man, his arm around her, her head on his shoulder. Posted 3 days ago. The caption said, "Always my love," followed by a heart emoji. I sat down heavily on the couch. "How long have you known?" I asked quietly. "Since you moved in," Aling B said. "Everyone in building knows. I am sorry, sir. You seem like good man. You deserve to know truth." She patted my shoulder and left. I sat there alone, staring at nothing. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there in the silence of my expensive apartment, in the country I'd come to for peace, staring at the wall. After a long time, I whispered to the empty room, "I was a good man." Past tense. I was a good man. Before this. Before her. Before I let myself become something I didn't recognize. I didn't confront Charelle. I didn't call her. I didn't demand explanations. I just started packing, quietly, methodically, clothes into a suitcase, papers into folders. I paid the last month's rent and told the landlord I was leaving. I opened my laptop and booked a one-way ticket back to the United States, departing in 3 days. No return. That evening, my phone buzzed. A message from Sherell. "Where are you? Why are you not answering?" I stared at the message for a long time. I started typing a response, a long one, telling her everything I knew, about Lena and the fake surgery, about the boyfriend in Manila, about how she'd used me, about how I'd been so desperate for love that I'd let her destroy me. I typed for 10 minutes. Then I deleted it all. I typed another message. Deleted that too. Finally, I wrote the only thing that mattered. "I'm going home. Take care of Miguel." 3 seconds later, my phone rang. I stared at her name on the screen. Let it ring. It went to voicemail. She called again. I didn't answer. Then the messages started coming. "What do you mean you are going home? What happened? Why are you doing this?" Voice messages followed. I listened to one. She was crying, or pretending to cry. "Preston, please, talk to me. What did I do? Why are you doing this to us? Miguel will be heartbroken. How can you abandon us like this?" Her voice sounded fake, rehearsed, like she was reading from a script she'd used before, on other men, in other situations. I listened to the whole message. Then I blocked her number. Just like that, years of messages, of calls, of history, gone, blocked. I felt nothing, just emptiness, just tired. At the airport 3 days later, I sat alone with my coffee and watched families reunite at the arrival's gate. Parents hugging children, couples kissing, friends laughing. I thought about the money, over $15,000 in less than 8 months. I thought about the lies, the manipulation, the boyfriend she'd had the entire time, the fake surgery, the drunken brother, the uncle who stole my investment, the family that saw me as nothing but a walking bank account. But mostly, I thought about how badly I'd wanted to believe her, how desperately I'd needed to feel wanted, How I'd ignored every single warning sign because the alternative, being alone, seemed worse than being used. The flight was called. I picked up my bag and walked toward the gate. I didn't look back. Not at the city, not at the terminal, not at the country where I'd thought I'd found peace. I just walked forward, one step at a time, going home to face the cold, the empty house, the silence. But this time, it would be different. This time, the silence would be mine. Winter in Iowa hit hard that year. I got back to my house in late November and the cold seeped into my bones immediately. The house looked exactly like I'd left it. Empty. Quiet. The kitchen table where I used to eat alone. The couch where I'd watch TV by myself. The bedroom where the other side of the bed never got warm. For the first few weeks, I barely left. I'd wake up, make coffee, sit on the couch, and stare at the wall. I wasn't depressed exactly. I was just empty, hollowed out. I'd check my phone sometimes, forgetting I'd blocked her. I'd think about calling, about asking for explanations, about demanding my money back, but I never did. What was the point? You can't get blood from a stone, and you can't get truth from someone who's been lying from day one. My daughter called in December, Emily. She was 32 now, living in Chicago with her husband and 2 kids. We hadn't talked much since the divorce. She'd taken her mother's side naturally. "Dad," she said when I answered, "I heard you were back. Are you okay?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm okay." There was a long pause. "Where were you?" she asked. "Philippines," I said. Another pause. "For 8 months?" "Yeah." "Dad, what were you doing there?" I could hear the worry in her voice, the judgment. "Living," I said simply. "Just living." She sighed. "Look, I know things have been hard since Mom, but disappearing to Southeast Asia isn't the answer. You need to talk to someone." "I know," I said, and I meant it. After we hung up, I sat there for a long time. Then I Googled therapists in the area. Dr. Matthews was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a calm voice. I started seeing her once a week. At first, I didn't want to talk about the Philippines. I talked about the divorce, about how my ex-wife had left me for her yoga instructor, about how my kids had slowly drifted away, about how retirement had felt like falling into an empty well. But eventually, Dr. Matthews asked, "What made you go to the Philippines?" And it all came out. Everything. Sherell, the family, the money, the lies, the manipulation, the boyfriend. When I finished, Dr. Matthews was quiet for a moment. "Do you regret going?" she finally asked. I thought about it for a long time. Longer than I probably should have. "No," I said finally. "I regret staying. I regret believing her. I regret ignoring the red flags. But going? Trying to find something better? No, I don't regret that. I regret what I let myself become while I was there." Spring came slowly. The snow melted. The trees started budding. I joined a volunteer group at the local community center. We'd serve meals to homeless families on Wednesday nights. I met a guy there named Tom, retired postal worker, also divorced. We started hiking together on weekends. Nothing intense, just local trails, easy walks. He didn't ask about my time in the Philippines, and I didn't offer. We'd just walk and talk about sports, about the weather, about normal things. It felt good. Normal. Real. One Saturday in late April, I got a notification on my phone. Facebook message request. I almost ignored it, but something made me click. It was from Charelle. "Preston, I hope you are well. I'm sorry for everything that happened. I miss you. Miguel misses you. Can we talk?" I stared at the message. My finger hovered over it. For just a second, just one tiny second, I thought about opening it, about responding, about asking her why, about giving her one more chance to explain. Then I closed the app, went to her profile, deleted the message request, blocked her on Facebook, on Instagram, on every platform I could think of. And when I was done, I felt lighter, like I'd just put down something heavy I'd been carrying for months. That evening, I sat on my porch with a beer, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. I thought about Cebu, about the beach, about those first mornings when I'd have coffee and watch the sun come up over the water, about the woman who'd smiled at me and made me feel seen for the first time in years. I didn't miss her. Not really. I missed the version of myself that still believed, that still hoped, that still thought love was possible for a 62-year-old divorced man with grown kids and a modest pension. But that version of me was gone. She'd taken him. Or maybe I'd given him away too easily. Either way, he was gone. In his place was someone quieter, more careful, less trusting, but also, somehow, more at peace. I finished my beer and went inside. The house was quiet, but it was my quiet, my space, my life, and for the first time since I'd come back, that felt like enough. I don't hate her. I've thought about that a lot. Late at night when I can't sleep, I've asked myself if I hate Sherell. The answer is no. I don't even blame her anymore. Not really. She did what she had to do to survive. In a country where poverty is crushing and opportunities are few, she found a way to take care of herself and her son. Was it wrong? Yes. Was it cruel? Absolutely. But I understand it. What I can't forgive is myself, for being so desperate, for ignoring the truth when it was right in front of me, for believing that love could be bought with school uniforms and medical payments and motorcycle repairs. Love can't be bought. I know that now. It can be faked, manipulated, performed, but it can't be bought. The real thing, the kind that lasts, that's built on truth and trust and mutual respect. That can't be purchased with $15,000 and 8 months of denial. I learned that lesson the hard way. In a country far from home, in the arms of a woman who never loved me, who probably couldn't have loved me even if she'd wanted to, because I was never a person to her. I was a solution, a means to an end, a walking, talking ATM machine with feelings. Some nights I still dream about Cebu, about the beach, about the sound of the ocean, about Miguel's laugh when I'd buy him ice cream, about Sherell's smile before I knew it was fake. Those dreams aren't nightmares exactly. They're just sad, like watching a movie about someone else's life, someone naive, someone hopeful, someone who doesn't exist anymore. When I wake up, I'm not angry. I'm just grateful I made it out, that I came home, that I still have enough savings left to live on, that I didn't lose everything. Some men do. I've read the stories online, men who marry these women, who send money for years, who buy houses and cars and businesses, men who lose their life savings and their dignity and sometimes their will to live. I was lucky. I got out before it went that far, before I married her, before I invested everything. I got out with my life intact, damaged, but intact. It's been almost a year now since I left the Philippines. Summer's here again. The community center asked if I'd be interested in teaching a basic English class for new immigrants. I said yes. It gives me something to do, a purpose. The students are mostly from Mexico and Somalia. They're grateful. They work hard. They remind me that starting over is possible at any age, in any situation. Last week, one of my students, a woman from Oaxaca named Rosa, stayed after class. "Teacher Preston," she said in careful English, "thank you for helping us. You are good, man." I smiled at her. "Thank you, Rosa. You're doing great." As she left, I realized something. She'd called me a good man. Present tense, not past, present. Maybe she was right. Maybe I still am. Maybe I was a good man who made bad choices, who let loneliness cloud his judgment, who trusted the wrong person, but who's still here, still trying, still standing. That's got to count for something. I wanted a quiet life. I got one, just not the way I thought. I thought I'd find it on a beach in Cebu, with a woman who smiled at me over breakfast, with a ready-made family who'd welcome me in. But that wasn't peace. That was a transaction disguised as love. The real quiet life, the real peace. I found it back here, in my empty house in Iowa. In therapy sessions where I learned to forgive myself, in Wednesday night volunteer shifts, in weekend hikes with Tom, in teaching English to immigrants who remind me that hope isn't stupid, it's necessary. This quiet life doesn't look like I imagined. There's no romantic partner, no ready-made family, no tropical sunsets, just me, my house, my routine, my small circle of friends, my purpose, and you know what? That's enough. It has to be. Because the alternative is going back to that desperate, lonely man who'd pay anything, believe anything, ignore anything, just to feel wanted. And I can't be him anymore. I won't be him anymore. If I could go back and talk to that version of myself, sitting alone at that cafe in Cebu, about to meet Sherell for the first time, I don't know what I'd say. Would I tell him not to talk to her? To run? To get on the next plane home? Maybe, but probably not. Because even though it nearly destroyed me, even though it cost me thousands of dollars and months of my life and a piece of my soul I'll never get back, it taught me something important. It taught me that being alone is better than being used. That peace can't be found in another person. That you can't run from loneliness by flying to another country. That the work of healing has to happen inside you, not outside. These are hard lessons, expensive lessons, painful lessons, but they're lessons I needed to learn. And now I have. So here I am, 63 years old, divorced, retired, living alone in Iowa, teaching English, volunteering, hiking, going to therapy, living a quiet life, the quiet life I always wanted. Just me, just this, just enough.